I think they're blind and deaf, quite frankly, and I think Andrew Bolt's the most blindest person on this planet. Hi everyone, and thanks for being with me. I'm going to talk about one of my most favourite persons, the person that I admire, that I watch a lot, that I've come to understand as being one of the biggest knobs on this planet. And I'm speaking about, and I'm not speaking about Donald Trump because he sits up there with this dude, but this is Andrew Bolt again. And the reason why I'm having this conversation with you about him is that he's taken his most favourite topic and he's decided that he's going to have a discussion around the ABC, regardless of whether or not any of this stuff that he presents is topical or not, because it isn't, as you're about to find out. Now, Andrew Bolt is a man who believes that everything that he says and does has the highest ethical, principled, journalistic standards that you could possibly ever wish anyone to have. And as a result of that, he believes that whatever he says is the truth, when in actual fact, it's garnished in shit. And he knows it to some extent. And so someone said to me recently, are you sure Andrew Bolt actually believes everything he says? Well, I find it difficult to believe that an intelligent man such as him, and I'm assuming he is intelligent, can actually step back and look at the things that he says and realises that perhaps they're not all true either. So there's a lot of projection takes place in relation to Andrew Bolt's world, where he's projecting the very things that he himself thinks and believes. So many of the things that he says in this video are things that he thinks and believes about himself. So they're highlighting his own prejudices and so on. So I'll just play a little bit of this clip and you can decide whether I'm right or wrong, as I'm sure many of you probably will.
But, and here is the farce, don't believe your eyes. The ABC is not biased. Not at all. Not according to its managing director, David Anderson.
And I love the way he's so funny, isn't he? I mean, his sense of humour, his sarcasm is an absolute delight to behold. The man is, look, if he had his own comedy show, it would be a hit. He'd be up there with Trevor Noah, I'm quite certain, because he has a unique way of capturing humour. And he does it in such a serious manner that he almost wants you to believe that what he's saying is the truth, without sarcasm. But he has more to say. Let's hear what he has to say.
Not strike him dead for bearing false witness today. For 3 times he did deny it.
I believe people act impartially at the ABC. I don't see systemic bias at the ABC. I don't think there's bias in our reporting.
And because he said it on the ABC today and said it to presenter Patricia Karvelas, who's praised Labor's hopeless Indigenous Affairs Minister as a
Just
legend.
an example of his bias, his lack of bias, is that he calls Linda Burney hopeless. So this is the degree of integrity that I admire with Andrew Bolt, because there's a sense of purity about what he says. There's a sense of awareness that saying that somebody is hopeless is not biased. There's nothing that would make anybody think that the word hopeless will be indicating that he's criticising somebody else and therefore just demonstrating a bias. No, that would never occur to Andrew.
Of course he wasn't confronted with example after example, the very bias that only a blind man could not see, nor the deaf hear. But on Sky News, I'm glad to report we are not blind, we are not deaf.
No, you are extremely biased. That you didn't say. So I think they're blind and deaf, quite frankly, and I think Andrew Bolt's the most blindest person on this planet.
Armstrong is either a liar or a fool. Let me now give you just 3 more cases of ABC bias from the hundreds that I've presented here and in my newspaper columns. Now, of course, this is too easy. See, the ABC's massive bias of global warming, so obvious, I'm not even going to bother giving
and
examples.
And because Andrew Bolt happens to be a climate denier, we don't see any degree in relation to his biases at all, do we? I mean, that, heaven forbid that he isn't in charge of governments that would just totally allow all the fossil fuel industries to just rampantly rip this country apart, that he wouldn't care about the pollutants that go into the atmosphere, that he wouldn't give a damn about how this is going to affect future generations. Because at the end of the day, let's face it, Andrew Bolt is always right.
But there's also its bias against Catholics. That's so bad that the ABC reported totally fake claims that the remains of 182 Indigenous children were found secretly buried at a Catholic residential school in Canada. Turns out, completely false.
Now, the reality is that there have been bodies found at residential schools. I don't know whether they were Catholic or not, but it is a bit of a scandal in Canada. And if anybody wants to fact check me on that, please feel free to do so. But, my understanding is that there were. But here he is, because it's Catholic. Now, I don't know whether Andrew Bolt's Catholic. Heaven forbid that he is. But he's certainly a great supporter of, as you're about to find out, of George Pell.
And the ABC has never corrected that smear. But more seriously, of course, its resident bigots and crusaders helped to hound the innocent Cardinal George Pell to jail on clearly bogus claims that he raped 2 teenagers once in an open room right after Mass, claims that the High Court at last threw out. Not one...
Now, the High Court, I think we need to be clear too that he was found guilty by a jury, that George Pell is, in my humble view, or was, a revolting individual who he was accused of, and in court it was found out that he had sexually assaulted 2 boys. Now, Andrew Bolt puts up this alternate argument because, as he says, he's done the research. So, he knows, he's got all the answers because he's sort of omniscient. But the reality is, jury found Pell guilty. He went to court and he got off on some technicality through the High Court. The other thing too to note is that Pell had the resources to be able to go to the High Court anyway, which is something that us ordinary everyday citizens would not ever be able to do. And here this dude is still advocating for Pell's innocence after all this shit. And, personally, I hope, I'm glad that Pell's gone. I would say that about any pedophile for that matter. And here he is still, years later, still trying to defend him. Frankly, it's bloody pathetic.
ABC reporter ever did what I did and checked the evidence to find, well, hello.
Yep.
Neither George Pell
I'm sure you have.
nor his alleged victim could have been at the scene of the crime at the only time it could have been committed.
I just actually want to see what evidence you've got to support all of that. And he goes on later to talk about some ABC commentators that have said that have done the welcome to country thing, and that demonstrates a bias as well. I mean, the man is so skewed in his version of the world that it scares me to some extent that he is influential enough to be able to convince others of his version of events. Now, I want to know who in the world out there sits back and says, well, George Pell was innocent, for example. Who out there says that people should not be able to say things that they believe in, regardless of, I don't object. I have no objection whatsoever to him saying what he says. The point is that we need to be able to recognise it for what it is, and most of it's crap. And he criticised somebody for simply saying something about an Indigenous person just doing a welcome to country at the end of a report. And that is just so nitpicky that it's bloody pathetic. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please remember to subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, do all that sort of stuff. And if you wish to contact me, you can contact me at that email address below. Now, I know that there'll be some people that will criticise me, let me know about my biases. I'm happy for you to do that because I know I've got some. And I just want to remind you that if you're going to criticise me about my biases, please try and remember what your own are. Thanks everybody for being with me. Take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.